Welcome, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey.
And we're here finally. Hello, everybody.
Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. And we broadcast every Tuesday from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock Pacific time on CIVL, on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley, and also on the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group, as well as on my YouTube channel. And Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. And if you want to join in the chat, then you can live stream us on the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group or on my YouTube channel. And then you can participate live during the show and add your comments and your questions. We've been doing the show for nearly 5 years, and you can catch all of the podcasts on drlesliephillips.com/category podcasts. So over the years, we've covered many, many different topics all about metaphysics and spirituality. And this year, we have a series that we're doing called the Intuition and Chakras series. And we are basically, what we're doing is we're following through the chapters in my book, which is on intuition and chakras. So not a lot of people know this, but all of your chakras are communication centers. All of your chakras are conduits for spiritual communication. I think a lot of people, when they think about being psychic and they think about intuition, they think about the third eye, the sixth chakra, maybe about the crown chakra, but not necessarily the rest of the chakra system. And so what my book is about and what we've been doing on our series is looking at all the different forms of intuition that exist and how they relate to the chakra system. And so we've worked our way up from the first chakra all the way up to the fifth chakra. And so we are today talking about an aspect of the fifth chakra, which is narrow band telepathy. So you can think of the fifth chakra, it's the one that is the energy center located near the cleft of your throat. And it basically governs communication, whether it is the communication that you do through your physical body in the physical world in order to communicate with other people, or whether it is different forms of spiritual communication. And the forms of spiritual communication channeled through this energy center include in your inner voice, and we did a show on that, and your inner voice is the voice of your higher being communicating to you. Clairaudience or clear hearing. So this is a form of psychic ability where you can hear things like angels and your spirit guides talking to you. And now we're talking about telepathy. And there are actually two forms of telepathy, broadband and narrowband. And broadband telepathy it relates to telepathic communication one-to-many, where narrowband is one-to-one. So narrowband telepathic communication is you communicating telepathically to one other person, or possibly an animal, or even possibly a plant. Whereas broadband might be, an example of that might be somebody who is teaching a group of people, standing on a stage, inspiring people, delivering a message to people. Then there could be a telepathic communication that's going on between the speaker and the audience. And in fact, when when I do my psychic ability blueprint readings, which are basically a personalized chart of your psychic abilities and how they relate to your life purpose, I've noticed a trend in that I've done a large number of psychic ability blueprints over the last many years that I've been doing it. And I've noticed people who are in that realm of speaking, for example, radio show hosts, they always seem to have quite a high level of broadband telepathy. And they may not know it because they're communicating verbally, but with their audience, but they're actually communicating on other levels with their audience as well. So the main topic last week was broadband telepathy. And this week, it's narrowband telepathy. And there's actually been a lot of scientific research on telepathic communication. So, for example, there are many, many cases of telepathic communication between twins, or even people who are in close relationships with one another. And there is scientific research into animals and how they communicate. So, for example, there's a famous scientist, an English scientist called Rupert Sheldrake, and I believe he's done a lot of research into, for example, dogs when they are left home alone. How is it that they always know the moment that their owner has decided to come home? So not when their owner is in the driveway, not when their owner is, putting the key in the door, but perhaps when the owner is still at work and gets up from their desk ready to come home. At that precise moment, the dog stands up, goes to the door, and waits with great anticipation for their owner. And so it is a form of communication used by animals, telepathic communication, and it's non-verbal communication. So it's communication that's happening non-verbally, where two beings are able to understand each other. They've also done studies on plants as well. And I'll see if I can remember the details, but there's one study I remember reading about where it's a bit cruel really to plants, but they had two sets of plants in a separate building from one another. And they had people come in and interact with the plants. And some people were under instruction to be nice to the plants, water them, talk to them. And other people came in with a pair of scissors and trimmed them. And they measured signals within the plants. And then they sent the same people to a distant room that had different plants in. And those plants who'd never been exposed to those people before reacted. And they were clearly disturbed when the people coming in with the scissors to chop the leaves came in. So it's a fascinating subject. And that's what today's show is all about. So let's see if there's anything that we can look at in my book on intuition and chakras about narrowband telepathy. See how can you validate telepathy? So what's it like to communicate telepathically? Well, and actually, there's some great games that you can play. So, for example, you could have play with a friend, and one of you thinks of a color and transmits the color, and the other one receives and sees if they know what the color is. So telepathic communication is two-way, giving and receiving. So you can send it and you can receive it. So a great way to practice is that color game. You can even have the one friend put the color in a closed box and then send the color, and then you can validate if you got it right by opening the box and seeing what's inside the box. In fact, this is probably one of the most, there's lots of scientific study where they have shapes on cards to test telepathic communication as well. So it's not just Dr. Spock on Star Trek. It's it's a natural form of spiritual communication.
It's also Nate.
It's also what?
Nate.
Nate?
Nate, yes. Nate says, just sharing, but I've had it happen where I think to text someone, and then as I reach for my phone to text them, I receive a text from them.
That's really cool, Nate. Thank you for sharing. And I think probably a lot of listeners can identify with that they have had that happen to them, where as soon as they think of someone, that other person corresponds with them. Or the phone goes and you know who's on the phone without looking at your caller display is another common example. And so, yeah, listeners, anyone else in the chat room, let us share with us your experiences of telepathic communication. The other one is when you think the same thing at the same time as somebody else, and then they say it out loud, and it's like, wow, I was just thinking that, I was just, so whose thought was it in the first place? The one who spoke it out loud, was it really your thought? So I'm going to read out just a couple of paragraphs from my book that talks about telepathy. So if you have had the experience of being able to tell what somebody else was thinking, having the same thoughts at the same time as people that you're close to, having a habit of voicing what others are thinking, or tuning into loved ones who are far away and instinctively know how they are, then you have experienced telepathic communication. Some other traits that help identify a strong gift in this area include being skilled at helping the tongue-tied express what they want to say, having a strong instinct about babies and their needs. So being able to understand a pre-verbal toddler, someone who can't speak in language yet, being able to understand your pets and respond to your pets, really being able to tune into your pet cat or your pet dog. Telepaths often have a depth of understanding of others that most people don't share. They can pick up the consensus in a room of people who are debating a topic, or read between the lines when someone is talking or lying. They are fabulous at non-verbal communication and make great speakers because they can reach most people in a crowd by communicating beyond words. Their most common phrase is, I was just thinking that, or I knew you were going to say that. So telepathy involves receiving and sending. It can be easy for telepathy to influence and persuade others. Easy for telepaths to influence and persuade others. Sometimes they are vulnerable to foreign thoughts and have an impulse to act out of character. And if you identify with this description, you are telepathic. So that's another thing about telepathy, is people don't often say what they mean. And so you've all felt those uncomfortable moments where on the surface somebody's being nice, but you've got a feeling underneath that they really don't like you, or because we're broadcasting telepathic messages all the time. And so someone who's sensitive to telepathic messages can pick up on that. So maybe your friend tells you, I like your new shirt, or I like your new dress. And really they're thinking how awful it is. Someone who's sensitive telepathically can pick up on that, and it feels uncomfortable. Or even in the workplace, I think it can lend itself to paranoia, really. If there are things going on that are, maybe being decided by the management or something, and it's in the air, but it's not being communicated to everybody yet, and you're sensitive on that telepathic level, then you can feel quite uncomfortable. And if you don't validate where that information is coming from, you can feel like you're going paranoid.
Just like in a relationship, marriage, or if you're not tuned in, it's a lot of times you hear couples say, well, you should have read my mind. What do you want me to do? Read your mind? The other one goes, yes, you should by now.
Yeah.
We also have a comment from Chrissy.
Yeah.
Chrissy says, last week I was about to go out and take my dog for a walk and planned on calling my dad. As I'm heading out the door, he called me as I was headed out the door. So cool.
Very cool. Thank you.
I love that one, with the telephone, when you haven't heard from somebody in ages and you just start thinking about it and the telephone rings and it's them. And one of the things I like to do with telepathy is when the telephone rings, is actually guess who it is. Or the doorbell rings.
Yeah.
What's that? What parcel am I receiving? Or what is the mailman bringing? It's kind of fun. I pretty well dead on sometimes. Also, Brian says, I've been able to pick up if someone likes me romantically. Usually it comes through strongly as images and feelings. Too fast for me to think it up. I've always doubted it, but at times I've had those feelings validated.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. There's a heck of a lot of energy exchange going on, especially when somebody's attracted to you. And so you can be picking up on their emotions, and that's clairsentience, or having all of these pictures that are coming from that person that you're reading. So great. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm wondering if it's time for us to go to a break. No. Okay. Well, I just encourage all the listeners to post their questions about telepathy and about anything else they'd like to ask about. We did have somebody write in with a question about telepathy.
Oh, yeah, we'll cover that one in the next section.
Okay.
After the break. And just a quick note, I haven't been asking, but for those people on Facebook and on YouTube, please, if you're enjoying the show, just give us a like so that we get some better ratings on YouTube and Facebook. More people can join us.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
A lot of people, I guess, didn't know that there's such a thing as broadband and narrowband telepathy.
No, I guess you just think about telepathy, but there is a difference between, and just think about a radio set, really. You've got broadband and narrowband, I think, on the radio. But the broadband enables you to reach a lot of people, and maybe even just reaching them on their level. Because it can be hard.
Now it's time for a break, Dr.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you.
All right, listeners, you've been tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth, and we'll be back after these messages.
Okay, Dr. Leslie.
Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey. And tonight's show is all about telepathy. But don't let that stop you asking a question about something else. I've got our first question from Mika. And Mika said, my question, have you got it there, Corey?
Yeah.
Okay.
My question for the show is, How long can I stop broadcast? How can I stop broadcasting my thoughts to everyone? I get a lot of mean, intrusive thoughts I don't agree with, and I noticed others responding and retaliating. I've been thinking isolating is best. I notice myself responding when others are communicating with me, but I only realize until after. I only realize afterwards.
Yeah, so Mika, that sounds to me like there's some kind of channeling going on. And so, what do I mean by channeling? I mean that some other energy is coming through you than your own energy. And so, these mean, intrusive thoughts that you don't agree with, I'm actually wondering whether they're your thoughts at all, and rather they are thoughts that are being channeled through you. And so how can you stop broadcasting those thoughts? The answer is to own your space, to learn how to own your space, so that you are not an open vessel for other energies to be coming through you. And how do you own your space? Well, there's various energy techniques, and many of them are in my book, Intuition and Chakras. There also is a free meditation on my website, under the free downloads, which will teach you a technique called grounding and another technique called centering. And what those techniques do is they focus you in your own body. And maybe that sounds like a strange thing to say, but you are spirit, you are not your body. So think of your body as your vessel, your vehicle, and you are meant to enlighten or be embodied within that physical vessel. And if you don't own it, someone or something else will own it. And so I'm thinking that these intrusive thoughts are not yours. And then if you learn how to ground, which is a technique where you create an anchor point and a flow of energy between your first chakra and the center of the earth, that helps pull you into your body and gives you a conduit for releasing the foreign energy. The second part of your question, I've been thinking of isolating myself. It doesn't That doesn't necessarily work, because energy flows wherever it flows. So even if you lock yourself in your house or in a room, that doesn't mean that energy won't be coming through you, because it's energy, right? It's not physical substance, it's energy. And so much better, Mika, to learn how to own your space. And the other thing that makes me think that it's a form of channeling that you're doing is that you notice yourself responding when others are communicating with you, but you only realize until after. So you're doing a kind of unconscious response and maybe not in charge of what you're saying, and then afterwards going, oh, what happened there and what did I say? So I'll take a quick look at your energy as well, just because if there's anything else. So I would just say that that's what it is. And so spending some time, and actually what actually coming up quite strongly is the fifth chakra. And there are various ways that those types of energies can be getting in. There's also different protections that you can learn to protect your energy field as well, and to absorb the incoming energy before it gets into your space. And I teach a lot of those kinds of techniques in my Unlock Your Intuition course, which actually reminds me that there is a webinar tomorrow evening called Awaken Your Psychic Abilities, and you can sign up for that on my website. It's at 6:30 on tomorrow night Pacific time, and it's another opportunity to listen about what might block psychic abilities and get in charge of your system. And there'll be a Q&A at the end as well. So you might want to tune into that, Mika. Do we have any other questions, Corey?
Yes, we do.
Sounds good.
Does it?
Yeah.
Nate says, I sometimes get a bad feeling, pit in my stomach as I receive a phone call or notification and just know I'm going to receive something stressful on the other end before even hearing what it is.
Yeah. So that, again, it sounds like clairsentience in the pit of your stomach. So that sort of, well, actually, no, pit of your stomach is more third chakra, isn't it? Well, let's take a look. So often when we say we get gut feelings, that's happening in the gut, the second chakra being 2 finger widths below the navel, and the psychic ability channeled through that one being clairsentience. But I guess you're saying in your stomach, the pit of your stomach. So let's just take a look at what's going on. And he just said just some bad news.
Yes, the stressful news.
Yeah. So I would say either you might be tuning in on an emotional level to the emotional energy coming from the person sending it. Sometimes people, maybe sending bad news and wanting to control how you respond to it. It's also possible for their energy to come in at the third chakra and to for us to shut the third chakra down, and then that kind of feels it's like when we feel afraid, really. So yeah, could be either of those things happening. So thank you, Nate, for that question.
Okay, I've got another one here. Let me just get the whole thing for you, Dr. Leslie, so that we don't miss out more. Okay, this one is from, oops, Weiss. Weiss says, how to influence my patients telepathically about their recovery to make them more motivated to recover from eating disorder, especially anorexia nervosa. For example, such tools such as broadcasting it constantly, meditating on their recovery, etc. My patients seem sometimes possessed by strange entities telling them not to eat because they will be fat.
Okay.
That's a yucky one.
Pardon?
That's yucky.
Yucky?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, people that when you're working with people, not being able to help them and looking for different ways to work with them. Right? Just sometimes people have a tendency to, how do I put it, just go into negativity about patients, but it looks like she's or he's doing everything they can to get in touch and work with them.
Yeah, so she.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so well, I'll look at that. And you can only do what you can do, and you cannot force somebody to do something that they don't want to do. And it's inappropriate as well to go into their space to try and manipulate them to do something. But you can communicate telepathically. And I mean, I would just say because here's the thing. Sometimes in those situations, physical communication can be difficult. If you've got a teenager with an attitude, they're not going to want to listen to what you're saying, are they, for example? And you might have a whole family dynamic going on there as well. So you can send pictures telepathically to your patient, and they could be pictures of what it is to be healthy. Pictures inviting them to eat healthy food. positive information like that. I'll share an analogy. It's not exactly the same. It's a much simpler case. But I remember when I was a kid and my cat was sick and she wasn't eating and she didn't eat for days. So I sat and sent pictures to her. And in the picture, it was a picture of her eating her food. And so I was showing her a picture of her eating her food. And after quite a short while, actually, she ate her food. And so I suggest something like that. I mean, you know what you want to communicate to your patients. And so sending them the images of what you're wanting them to know or how you might suggest they might respond. It sounds like you're doing that already. And so I would say just be conscious that you're not moving into their space, but you're just sending them a message. Hope that makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
Good.
But I don't count. So. A question from Chrissy. I oftentimes know what my husband's reply is when I ask them a certain question and predict a response inside my head before they answer. Would this mean I could be considered telepathic?
Can you read that again?
I oftentimes know what my husband's reply is when I ask him a certain question and predict a response inside my head before he answers.
Yeah.
Would this mean I could be considered telepathic?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that you're tuning into your husband's response because spiritual communication is faster, it's instantaneous, whereas it takes a little bit of time and space for us to communicate in a verbal sense. So he has to listen to what you've said and he's thinking about it in his mind and then formulating it into a response. Whereas that the telepathic messages come out a lot faster than that. So it sounds to me like that might be very well be what's happening.
Or is it that she's putting the answer into his head to give back to her?
Well, that's a whole other thing, isn't it? Yeah, that's a whole other thing. And I'm sure there's plenty of that going around in the world.
Okay. Let's see what we have. We have 3 minutes left. Let me see if I've got one that you could probably. Okay, here's one from Nate. Says a question I have is it possible for negative entity attachments to infiltrate your mind and control your mood and thoughts?
Yeah.
You might want to expound on that.
But, it is possible, but it's only possible if you are not owning your space, like big time not owning your space. And if you've got some beliefs that support that happening in your reality. So it is possible. He said negative entity to control what your movements and your thought. Is that what he said?
Yeah, your moods. Yeah, your moods.
Oh, moods. Yeah, I mean, in some senses, most humans are channeling to some degree or other all the time. Because if you just think about a family, everyone's in each other's space in a family. And we've all had that experience where you say something and it's like, oh, I just reminded myself of my mother, or I just said that exactly like my father would say it. And often that's because you've got your mother or your father in your space. And so you're having a thought that is more their thought than your own, and you're acting on it and you're speaking on it. So like full-on entity possession is an extreme version of that. And and channeling is on the other pole of that. When I say channeling, I'm meaning channeling a higher being who might be delivering positive messages. So if you think about Bashar, and Daryl Anker is an example of this, or if you think about, just trying to think of some other, Ramtha and Jay-Z Knight is an example of this, or Cryon and Lee Carroll. They're all channelers who allow another being to come into their body and speak through them. And they're moving their body, they're speaking, and it is the other being that's controlling the body in those instances. And they're doing that under an agreement with that being to deliver benevolent messages. The other extreme of that is a non-benevolent energy coming through you, seemingly against your will. But if it's happening, it's happening with your agreement, because it wouldn't be happening if you weren't agreeing to allow it to happen. And it might be unconscious, but and it usually it's because I would say cases like that are more when somebody's been really traumatized in their life and have serious issues around personal pain and self-worth, or they are escaping reality, and through drugs, through alcohol, or other reasons, they're not owning their body. So I hope that answers your question, Nate, and thank you for asking it.
Nate says, thank you for your thoughtful answers. Just like everybody, I'm sure he's reflecting everybody's consideration. And I think right now will be a good time to go and take a short break.
Listeners, you've been tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie, and we'll be back after some messages. Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie, and also with Corey. And tonight, in our Intuition and Chakras series, we have been talking about narrowband telepathy and how we communicate telepathically with each other, and how animals communicate telepathically with each other, how humans can communicate with their animals telepathically, and more. And we're at that time in the show where we're taking your questions, and we're happy to take questions about telepathy or anything else that you want to ask about in the realm of psychic abilities.
Except for the winning lottery ticket numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from Mandy. And Mandy says, my dog passed away on the 15th. Do you think he's still here with me in spirit?
So, yes, but not in the way you think. So we are spirit. We are part of the oneness, and we always exist. We never cease to exist. And so, your dog has left the body, so that temporal self of your pet, the one that was walking around in a body, the body's departed, and that aspect of your pet has merged back into the spirit realm, for want of a better word. And so what does that mean? We tend to think in terms of being an individuated consciousness, because that is our experience when we are in a physical body. When we're not in a physical body, the experience is different, is more multidimensional, is broader, is more all-encompassing. And so it's sort of like saying, on the one hand, your dog is still with you, and on the other hand, your dog has moved on. And both are true, because he's, or the dog is in the world of spirit. And I will look at your, I'll take a look at this and see if there's anything else to say. And what I'm seeing is that, let's say it this way, I'm still seeing that there's a communication cord between you and the consciousness of your pet. It's coming from your heart chakra, and it's reaching into spirit to connect with the animal. And so I'm seeing that you're communicating with each other through that connection, and that you're sending love, and the love is being received. And it looks like your pet is sending appreciation to you as well. So there's communication still happening between you. Let's say it that way. So I hope that gives you some comfort.
I'm sure it will. Okay, we have a question from Brian. Brian says, Dr. Leslie, could you look at my telepathic abilities? I'm curious about what you could tell me about them. Anything I need to know?
Okay, Brian. Well, the first thing I want to say is, well, they're there. It's funny. It's sort of like you're showing me this picture, and you're what's the word when you puff your chest? You're puffing your chest, and it's sort of like a drum with all these reverberations coming out from it, and you're sort of proudly saying, yes, here it is. So the telepathic channels are, some of them anyway, located in the sternum, and in that area. And so you're showing me, yeah, you're looking for validation that this is an aspect of you and your psychic ability profile. So I will just validate it, and I'll see if there's anything else to say about it. So I don't know, Brian, you'll have to validate this or not, but I keep getting almost like the idea of music or rhythm, like drumming. And it feels like that there's this aspect that you're wanting me to communicate to you, which is, when somebody is, I don't know, they're a drummer and they're leading a drum circle, and everybody joins in and catches their rhythm. Or someone who's, I don't know, like there's a dance and they're the one that's going around getting everyone excited to join in the dance. You're sort of depicting yourself in that manner. Like, yeah, this is this positive trait that I have, and it's a way that I can use to raise the vibration and to influence people in a positive way, and to get people to be in sync. I was going to say collaborate, but it's more like be in sync, be in, synchronized with each other, in resonance with each other. And so you're showing me this as a strong ability. And now you're sort of twirling the baton like a drum, is it a drum major? The one who's leading the band. So yeah, you're showing me that all of these images of making a proud statement about your telepathic ability, and something that you're able to use to lead people, direct people, inspire people. So I hope that helps you. Hope that answers your question. That's fun.
Yeah, it is. I have a question from Nate. Nate says, my voice when speaking is audibly quiet, even when trying to speak loudly. I also find myself with a lack of words conversationally and struggle socially in general. Could this be a fifth chakra issue?
Yeah, it could be a fifth chakra. It sounds like a fifth chakra issue. It sounds, it sounds, it sounds also like you might have some invalidation going on. Let's take a look at you, Nate. Well, first thing that comes up is fifth chakra issue, in that I'm seeing a lot of pastime energy and pastime programming. So we might invite you to look at your growing up, whether you received a lot of messages to be quiet and mind your own business, and children should be seen and not heard, and because I'm just seeing that it looks like there's a lot of pastime programming keeping you shut down from speaking out. And there's also the pain of some invalidation that says nobody's going to want to hear what I have to say. And it's not true that nobody's going to want to hear what you have to say, but it looks like you believe that because you've been through some experiences earlier in your life when nobody wanted to listen to what you had to say. But that wasn't because of you or anything wrong with you. That was just because those people were being controlling. And so I would say it just looks like the solution is to clear out the fifth chakra and anywhere else where there's this programming and invalidation that would hold you back from your self-expression. And the other thing that's coming up is that you're very sensitive. And so the thing about socializing is, not only dealing with what I just spoke about, but also that thing that we were talking about earlier. There's what people present on the surface, and then there's what they're thinking underneath. But not only that, there's what people present on the surface, what is really going underneath them, and then there's also what's going on inside you. So if you've got programming to believe that I'm not important and nobody wants to pay attention to me, and you've got people not being completely authentic and all of that going on, then you can see how that magnifies into a socially awkward situation. But like I say, the solution is to clear out the programming and let go of the invalidation, because it's not true. Every single one of us is unique. Every single one of us is meant to be here, or we wouldn't be here. And every single one of us has a unique perspective to share with the rest of humanity. And that perspective is a unique eye of God. We're each unique eyes of God. There's no other Nate that sees the world the same way that Nate does. There's no other version of you out there. So you're here to be you, and to share of yourself with us. So being shut down from communicating gets in your way of that. Hope that helps, Nate.
I'm sure it will. And we have a question from Vislava. She says, I wonder what do you think about shamanism and being in touch with the power of different animals, or Chinese astrology, born in the year of the tiger, she says. Also, how some believe that they have a wheel of animals that support every human.
What was the last thing?
Also, how do you, I think what she wants to say is, what do you think about the way some people believe that they have a wheel of animal, that there's a wheel of animals that support every human? Sort of like, I would presume what she means is like the astrology readings in the newspaper, like one size fits all.
Or some totem animals. Okay, so you've asked about some big subjects there, because shamanism is a broad subject. And so let's just pick a few little bits and pieces out of that big subject to talk about. So animal totems is one thing, which is fantastic because each animal has its own energy, its own frequency, its own behavior patterns, and we can learn from those animals. And those animals may be accentuating a particular aspect within us. So I don't know, I'll make something up. Let's say you keep seeing squirrels everywhere. And then you notice, well, what's that squirrel teaching me? And oh, I've been hoarding things, or I need to put some things away for the winter, or whatever it is. So you know, but by paying attention to animals and the animals that show up in our life, they are symbols reflecting information to us about ourselves and about our lives. Another aspect of shamanism is where the shaman himself or herself takes on the energy of their power animal and either moves into the body of the power animal and travels with the power animal, or becomes that power animal in the astral form. And so what do I think about that? Let's see what to say about that. Well, one might just say, you know, some examples would be a shaman in the rainforest that travels in the jaguar, and through the jaguar's eyes is able to see things about the forest that they might not see through the eyes of a human. Or a witch with her cat, with her familiar. You know, the cat can wander around freely into other people's gardens and houses, for example. So I don't know. I'm not going to pass a judgment on that either way. I guess I'm just sharing some information about some of the practices, really. And then Chinese astrology. What to say about Chinese astrology? I'm not an expert in Chinese astrology. There's all sorts of different astrological belief systems, isn't there? And I think that they all are imbued with meaning. And for any of us that chooses to follow a particular astrological perspective, then it has benefit and useful information. The Chinese one talks about the year of the snake and the year of the dragon, and like I said, I don't know a lot about it, but I imagine that the idea is that you are, depending on what year you were born, you have the characteristics of that particular animal. And I think like even Western astrology, it's more about particular traits that a person might have rather than a permanent label to stick to somebody. So for example, both Corey and I were both born in the year of the snake, different year of the snake, but I think we're quite different, really. What do I think? And everyone has a wheel of animals supporting them. I think just like spirit guides, that there is validity in animal totems, animal energies that are supporting you and helping you. And just like we can have multiple spirit guides helping us at any one time, we can have multiple animal totems helping us at any one time. I think just like spirit guides, some of them are permanent and some of them cycle in and out. The same thing with animal totems, because at different times in our lives, we're focusing on different things. We are shifting and changing, and different energies are coming in. And so different energies might be more relevant to support us. And then if we even take that to a level beyond the way we're talking, potentially they're all just projections of our own consciousness that we're reflecting back at ourselves to bring us information and messages that's pertinent to where we're at in our spiritual growth.
Well, we have a few more questions, but it's time to end the show, Dr. Leslie.
Okay, sure.
So, folks, if you want to keep your questions till next week, jot them down, and Be happy to answer them next week. Without a doubt. I might even keep note of them myself and go from there.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for listening into the show this week. You've been tuning into Unlocking Your Truth. We're doing our Intuition and Chakras series. Next week, we're still on the 5th chakra, but we're going to talk about pragmatic intuition. And after that, we'll move on to the 6th and 7th chakras.
Anyway, folks, thank you again. Bye-bye. See you all next week.
Bye, everybody.